Before we get started, I'm extremely proud to say that this episode of The Petrified Comedian is brought to you by 4x3. 4x3 is an independent media company creating comedy content on YouTube. This week, they dropped an episode of their podcast On a Related Note with SNL writer Vanessa Jackson and a comedy special by Renee Gauthier. Support independent comedy at youtube.com/@FOURXTHREE or by looking up 4x3 on YouTube. Please enjoy the show. Chris Weir is a Kentucky native comedian, illustrator, and designer. He's got a confident, dry delivery and honest material that gives his comedy an effortlessly hilarious feel. Check out his special, Chris Weir, live in Cincinnati on YouTube. Chris, thank you so much for being here.
Anytime, man.
So, just to get started, if you could describe your comedy in 3 words, what would they be?
Dumb, pretty, confident.
Excellent. Dumb and pretty. That is certainly the first time I've heard that to be used to describe comedy. And like I said, you are a designer as well as a comedian. Is that your art right behind you?
Yeah. This is like an old painting I did in college of the Denver Broncos.
This is how little I know about sports. I was like,
Denver Broncos, huh? That's when they did cosplaying as the Reds in the 70s. Yeah, man.
Yeah.
This is an old college painting. It's one of just a couple pieces that I have of mine that are up on the walls. Yeah, just run out of spaces to put stuff. Eventually, some of your artwork ends up in places. Yeah,
Totally. I've got a couple of weird things hanging on the wall right in front of me. So is design your main line of work?
Yeah. As a day job, I do T-shirt designs. So I will just make like stuff that goes out to like Hot Topics, Spencer's, Route 21, Urban Outfitters, stuff like that. So I mean, it's kind of fun that I get to do like most of the illustrations and things like that to kind of scratch that itch. But yeah, I studied painting in college, went to Northern Kentucky University, and yeah, I studied graphic design just for a little bit. It wasn't real. I just wasn't feeling it at the time. And then eventually got a painting degree. And I kind of it was kind of like a twofold thing. I liked illustration and stuff and wanted to develop more that way. And I also wanted to do stand-up. And I felt like if I graduated with like a more like normal degree, like a graphic design degree, I feel like I just would have graduated into a job and would have been a lot more difficult for me to start the process of doing stand-up. So yeah, just try to handcuff myself for work for a job out of college, and that actually worked. And then so yeah, then I just started doing stand-up when I graduated college. Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. So so you're more of a freelance designer. You don't really have any coworkers then, right?
I do have coworkers, believe it or not. But yeah, I'm trying to find myself not doing the day job thing. But so far, it's pretty accommodating for stand-up that they've worked around like my kind of kooky schedule. So we'll see. So far, things are going well there. But we'll see. I'd like to just be solely a stand-up. So
that's awesome. So you said they've been really accommodating of you. Do any of your coworkers have they seen you do stand up?
Actually, yeah, that was something like it's not something like I was trying to hide, but it wasn't something like I'm trying to let people know about because it is a little bizarre that you just come across so weird to some people, depending on like what their interpretations of a stand up might be. But yeah, they actually came to that recording. Some of them did that night that we did for the 4x3. And so that went well, and I think that was a good thing for them to see because I got to do, I was headlining that, doing longer time, so they got to see like more of the breadth of my work as opposed to just like a short 5-minute, thing or whatever. So it was good that they got to see that, and they're all pretty cool. They're all pretty savvy people, a lot of them are illustrators, designers, and comedy fans. So I think that's also why it kind of works out well for me, working with them. But yeah, they've seen me before.
Yeah, I think being in sort of a creative field, they're sort of coming from a place of more understanding than, like Chris Weir, or not Chris Weir, Chris Seamer. I might do that a couple of times because I
That's fine. I do it sometimes too.
but Chris Seamer working in IT, he's not
Yeah,
necessarily gonna want to spread that too much. He was talking about he's had a couple of people come down, but he tries not to talk about it too much at his day job.
yeah.
Uh,
That's probably like more difficult crossover. IT people in the comedy world might be a bit of a clunky transition.
yeah, absolutely. So if you had to choose between comedy and illustration, but either one of them could be, your full time job and pay you whatever you wanted, which would you choose?
Man, I wouldn't want to do anything full time. That's the thing I found out. It's like doing stand up was, I like comedy, I like art stuff. So like that field just seemed like more of a natural draw. But also like the one of the bigger things is like I'd never wanted to have like a standard day job or 40 hours a week. Just seems crazy. And all of a sudden, you're doing that and more if you're doing, stand up and current times. It feels like there's so much additional stuff you have to do. But it feels like, and I'm putting in more work than like, some jobs I've worked before, it seems like. Uh, so in a perfect scenario, I would be able to not work full time at anything and be able to do a painting, illustration, or whatever, just for fun in my own time for, an hour or so a day, and then wait till the evening and go out and just do my stand up and not have to worry about doing any reels, not have to worry about doing any self promotion on social media. So I'm completely balking on your question and restructuring it and saying I wouldn't want to do anything full time, but I would like to be able to, split comedy and like art. I just like those things. I feel like they each kind of balance each other out. You know,
Absolutely. That, and I hear you also have sort of an interesting pet sitting gig that rounds out the works.
we have had some interesting pets roll through this house for whatever reason. I mean, my wife Lauren, she used to work. She was a general manager at a pet store, so we've had to watch some odd pets, and also like her family does have some atypical things like birds, chameleons, lizards, stuff like that. So when those people go out of town, they know that we've had a lot of experience with animals. You tend to be like you're like the person with the truck. I feel that always gets called. It's like, oh yeah, call Chris. He understands iguanas. He can deal with goldfinches. It'll be fine.
Yeah, I'm in a bit of a similar boat. I worked at the Cincinnati Zoo for a long time,
Oh really?
so yeah, I get called in to do these like weird older dog sittings, like where the dog is like on its deathbed, and they're like,
Oh
I
man.
one of the last times I sat, the family literally said, "This is the number for the vet, and this is the number if you think he needs to be put down."
Oh wow.
I was like, "Oh my god!" I was like
Oh,
19. Yeah.
that's heavy. At least they told you beforehand, as opposed to just like letting you figure out, like, hey, we know we might be leaving him on his deathbed right now. So you just cross that rainbow bridge when it comes.
Yeah, yeah, that was weird. So you have a joke about Harambe in your special.
You know.
Do you want some inside info on that day? Because your joke was shockingly accurate.
Oh yeah, and I do want some inside info. I do like well, yeah, it is about Harambe on the second part of the joke, but it's mostly about parenting and my perspective of it, and that was just a good vessel to describe the same thing that I was, the concept of it, because just like around that time there was so much uh, weird, stupid Harambe shit going around. So it was about Harambe, but it was a Harambe joke that wasn't a Harambe joke.
Absolutely, yeah. That was the jumping off point. But
Yeah, but yeah, let me hear some inside info about that.
well, and it's crazy because you talk about, you were like, I know that there were other people that saw this going down that did not step in.
Hmm.
Well, first of all, I like to say I worked there for 6 years. I took 1 year off between high school and college, and that was the year that Harambe died. So I like to say I go away for 1 year, and all hell breaks loose.
All the girls were here when I left.
I, but that day has been pieced together for me by my friends who worked there. So there are multiple people who said, hey, first of all, that woman who was there with her kids was there with 8 kids. She was spotted. She was spotted trying to cut in front of the line at the food court with her kids. She was like spotted dozens of times that day, and people were just like, "This is not going to go well." It was literally like, to your point, people are seeing this like, "Oh, this is a disaster waiting to happen."
Yeah.
And it turns out it was a very famous disaster waiting to happen.
Oh,
So,
manifested for sure.
so yeah, it was crazy. And then the craziest part is multiple people recall hearing a back and forth between the kid and the mom, where the kid's going, "I want to go see the gorillas," and she's like, "Stay right there." He says, "I'm going in." She goes, "No, you're not." And that's as much effort as she put into that. So
Oh wow, man. Yeah, so it happened the way we all thought it happened.
it happened exactly how people thought it. Yeah, it went
Yeah.
down. Absolutely.
And to Chris Seymour's point, because he has a take on that joke, we got a lovely new gorilla exhibit out of it.
Yes, we did. We absolutely did. Yeah, that was, it was so weird. And it kind of just showed the general ignorance of people, because like people were coming, and there's a statue of a gorilla there that's been there for decades. People were leaving cards to like up against it, thinking it was a Harambe memorial. They didn't care.
Yeah, we just made this bronze mold real quick, day after the
And we
incident.
shined it up so it looked really old.
Yeah, made a nice patina to it, gave it some age. Yeah, dude, that was a wild couple years. That Harambe thing did not lose steam.
And you know what? You probably didn't even hear what happened that same week at the zoo. There was a stabbing.
Yeah, if I did, I it's completely washed away from all the other news.
Exactly. That just so much weird stuff happens all at once.
Mm-hmm.
So in comedy, you obviously have to deal with hecklers. Can you describe to me like your worst heckler experience? Do you have one off the top of your head?
I don't know if like a worst heckler experience. I mean, yeah, there's probably like some where it's like, oh man, that person was drunk and talking a lot, or just felt like, it was their room or whatever. But I mean, some of the worst heckles aren't even like the person's trying to heckle. I mean, just like as an example, I was doing a show where a lady recently. I mean, this is just like in town where it was like a bar where people could bring their dogs, and the lady's dog just started walking around, and she's trying to discipline the dog, and the dog walks up on stage behind me, and the lady's trying to get her dog, and it's like that's a form of a heckle, and like that is so much more difficult because like I have to talk about it, I have to, it's on stage, there's no way I can just keep avoiding it, as opposed to like someone that's drunk and you can maybe shut them down real quick. But that's just like, well, this is my set now, this is just what I have to talk about, you know but oh well, actually, there is one thing that comes to mind. There was one time, I mean, this was years ago, where some drunk people walked into a show. This was just like at a bar, and I mean, they didn't look like the most well put together dudes. I'll say that. And then so they came in, said something. I just said the first thing that came to mind. I was like, oh look, it's the hepatitis twins, everybody. And so just a stupid little thing. It got a joke. I mean, it got a laugh. And then they came up to the stage, and immediately I realized, just looking at their eyes, they're like, "Well, these don't look like sober individuals." And then, I mean, long story short, one of the guys tries to just weirdly like hug me, and then he just licks the side of my face. And I pull out the microphone, I take his hat, and I throw it out the window. And then it's just like this weird, everything was broke down. They started going kind of crazy. They eventually got kicked out. They tried to get back in. The dude kicked which was a glass door. It shattered, and then they ran away. And then the cops came. They eventually arrested the dudes. It was great. And then I eventually got to do my set. And so like the whole show just stopped for a long while. And then I got to go back up, and the guys were put in the back of the squad car as I'm doing my set. And it was very vindicating to have it go from that to being like, I cannot believe these fuckers are coming up on stage and doing this, And then I got to watch them get, pulled away in the paddy wagon. So that was nice.
That's kind of the ultimate heckler victory right there.
Yeah. Down, you're being taken to the pokey. Love it.
So, when you have someone who interrupts the show like that, do you feel like you get an opportunity to build momentum in a different way, or is it kind of hard to recover from that?
I mean, it really depends. A lot of it has to do with like how determined I am to like do some bits or some jokes. Like there might be some times where like it doesn't, you know, I don't care that much about doing the set, or there's sometimes like I really want to try these things out, so it might just like kind of be irritating, something you got to deal with. But I try to get it like back on course as quickly as possible because I do like doing jokes. But sometimes if someone really you feel like they deserve it or you can make a meal out of it, really set an example. So yeah, it just really depends on the situation. And sometimes people generally don't mean to heckle, they don't know. And also all these videos they're seeing now with like comedians uploading like, their interactions they have. They're constantly if you're just watching comedy now, you think every joke starts with a comic asking a question to an audience member. So a lot of audience members now just think you're supposed to, interact. And so they don't like, what? I'm helping. I just saw you. All you do is post reels about you interacting with the audience. Why should I think this is weird? But
Yeah.
yeah, I try to avoid interactions as much as possible. But sometimes, it's fine. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, sometimes the audience wants you to sort of do something like, and I just rewatched your Live in Cincinnati set, and I must have been looking away or something because I didn't notice the first time through when I watched it when someone's taking an order right in front of
Yeah.
you, and you've got your Jesus coming down from heaven to give the commandments or whatever, and you're like, shh, I'll wait, shh, and like for me that like I'm currently writing my first stand-up not special obviously but
Yeah.
stand-up set, my first 5 minutes, and I'm thinking about, I'm so ADHD of a person, I don't really know how I would deal with an interruption, and that's something
Yeah.
that for me is I'm a little worried about but kind of excited to get. I know it's going to happen, but I'm just like interested to see how I deal with that.
Yeah, just try and take it easy. Just try and ride out the momentum. Just don't let, even if it does bother you, try not to let it look like it bothers you because, as soon as you get angry, you lose in the mind of the audience. And that's something else. Is like as a comic, we're thinking about all the other sets we've been doing, all the other times we've been working on these bits, and so sometimes someone talking or doing something where they're interrupting, you're not just thinking about them interrupting this set. You're thinking about all the other times someone else has interrupted, or the times you've been driving to the shows, and all the time you wasted. So, I mean, if you tell someone to shut up, like something like that, it might be justified in your head, and to all the comics, like I know where that's coming from. But like to a room full of strangers that are just your casual audience members, are like, this dude is crazy. This dude is a mean person. So, I mean, respond how you want to respond, but like sometimes the audience just doesn't know where you're coming from with some of that. But yeah, in that instance you were talking about, like them taking that order because they're just right up front, and it was at like the quietest part in like my set because I'm like doing an act out or whatever, and so I just knew like there's no way I could do this and have everyone be thinking about what I'm doing when they can hear just as easily the food order that's going on right in front of me. So I feel like I just had to comment on it, but try to stay in the bit at the same time. But yeah.
That's interesting. So kind of backing off kind of allowed you to give a real moment with the crowd right there, but B, keep the momentum like paused for a moment and then pick
Yeah.
it back up. That's cool. So you talked about being in the service industry a little bit. Have you ever been a waiter in the service
Oh yeah.
industry before?
Yeah, for years.
Do you feel like you learned anything in the service industry that helped you with comedy?
Oh, for sure. There's definitely, I mean, it's we're doing like a customer service job. We're dealing with a bunch of people and trying to please them. And a lot of times I feel like working in the service industry, you get treated poorly a lot. People look down on you. Some people do, and so I think just having like that kind of chip on your shoulder and just learning how to still have a smile on your face and just knowing how to deal with people, knowing how to treat servers. I mean, it's so like if you ever been out to, like to eat with somebody and they don't know how to treat like a server, it's embarrassing. It's just like, how old are you? Like, how did you grow up not knowing how to be like a civil person? Just you don't know how to ask for water. Like, what, so yeah, I worked for years in the service industry, and then eventually just ended up getting in the more in the art field. But yeah, dude, I think that has made me a better person for sure. Waiting on tables.
Absolutely. And yeah, I was also in the service industry for a few years. And for me personally, one of the things I feel like I'm going to call on from that is dealing with annoying customers. Like, I feel
Mm.
like that's almost kind of like dealing with an annoying person in the audience where you're just like, all right, I'm going to smile, I'm going to be civil, and I got to keep doing my job.
Yeah, and you can see too, like hecklers and people at a table that are obnoxious. Or whatever you say, like I know how you would act in a comedy club. Like it's so similar. Like the person that talks down to a waiter or does like this, they're the person that's going to talk out in a comedy club. No awareness of their surrounding, no empathy. Yeah, so you do see a lot of things. It's a very similar lifestyle, the service industry life and the stand up comedy world.
Yeah, honestly, working nights and weekends and yeah, dealing with annoying people. So, who's your favorite comedian you've gotten to work with?
That I've gotten to work with. Um, I mean, Tom Segura. I got to work with him probably like five, maybe even like 7 years ago now. That was super cool, and that was right before he started. He just blew up into the stadium. Like he was still big, selling out comedy clubs. So it was like it was the easiest week to ever work. Having like all shows sold out. They come there wanting comedy and Tom Segura's type of audience, which they just love jokes. They just love having a good time. So that's everyone comes there with the same agenda, which is to laugh and have a good time. So the shows were amazing. He treated me well, made sure to treat me nicely in addition to like what the comedy club did. And yeah, then he blew up after that and was doing like stadiums and shit. So I'd love to work with him again. It's been a while, Tom. Uh, yeah, so he was probably one of the coolest. I mean, more recently working with Joe List, I think he's such a good writer. I liked working with him. Uh,
Yeah,
yeah,
you worked with Nikki Glazer too at one point, right?
I did. Yeah, I did work with her. Never work with your heroes. Let's see, who else did I work with? Yeah, I've worked. Well, I'm going to be working with Kyle Kinane, I guess. I'll be going to. He's going to be in Limestone. I've never worked with him before, but he's someone that's like probably like one of my favorite comics, and I'll at least be on the same show, sorta, with him.
Kyle Kinane is one of my absolute favorites. I frequently think about one of his lines where he talks about having. He talks about having gout, and he's like, "Don't feel bad for me. I eat like a campground's raccoon."
Yeah, yeah, he's so good.
He's awesome, and I once I started watching his comedy, I realized he voices like every other biker in any animated show. He's got the perfect voice for it.
Yeah, dude, he was the voice of Comedy Central for a while.
Was he
Not sure,
really?
yeah, I'm not sure if you remember that.
Yeah, you're
Yeah,
totally right. I didn't even think about that. Oh
Comedy
my god.
Central, workaholics. Yeah, he had
Yeah,
that rumbly gravel voice. Yeah, dude. So
that's amazing. I that just kind of blew my mind. That was the era that I was watching a lot of Comedy Central.
oh yeah,
So you're not just a stand-up comedian, you make sketches as well. Was that Chris Seamer with the knife in Shower
it
Gun?
was. It was him.
So I was doing all sorts of research on him, and then like I started researching you, and I was just like, "Holy shit, that's Chris!"
Yeah, dude. We had him do the shower gun video.
That was funny. So was that part of Future Science, or was that separate?
That was part of Future Science. Yeah, that was a show that we used to do once a month at Motor on Sundays for years, like 4 years, maybe longer than that. It was great, dude. We had a nice following of people that would come out every Sunday that we had the show, and the shows typically were a lot of fun with good audience. And we did a lot of sketches, live sketches, and we'd also record some stuff, and then we'd have like sometimes like PowerPoint presentations. We kind of had a host up there, kind of like directing how things were going and kind of introducing like the next acts, kind of cleaning it up a little bit with the breaks in between. But yeah, dude, that was super fun, and I really, really want to get back to doing some of that. Just like the writing that isn't stand up feels kind of not easier to generate, but like you don't put as much, you're not scrutinizing over it as much.
It's less personal.
Yeah, exactly. You don't feel like as attached to this stuff, so you're not as second guessing all the things. And also, it's like, dude, you gotta. Sometimes a due date is the best thing for anybody in an artistic field. The more, like for stand up, the more time you have to tinker around with it, it'll take a long, long time, and you can keep changing shit. But when you got something that's due in the next few weeks, it's just like this is the decision, move on with it. And so you just start. Oh yeah, so years of that, we've developed a lot of videos and sketches. I wish we would have done a better job at archiving some of the stuff, but there's a lot of stuff that is out there. And we are still in talks about getting back together and doing it. It's just much harder now because everyone, is older. Some of us have kids, and just trying to get everyone together at the same time is a challenge. But still holding out hope that we can hopefully have a actual future science show before the end of the year. But we'll see.
That'd be awesome. Yeah. Chris Seamer specifically spoke really highly of your work with Future Science. He said you guys did really special work.
Oh, no. Yeah, I guess that was kind of like one of the elevator pitches. Yeah, so a lot of times we just had people from wherever in the world, time, space. It was set in the future where we had the ability to time travel and just kind of interview these characters. We essentially had a topic. It gets a little convoluted, but we essentially had a topic that we would report on every month. Just have like a loose theme for the show. Um, and we did have a lot of just crazy people out there giving PowerPoints. Like I did this one character. The name was the dude was a ghost bounty hunter, Linda Shoeless, and he had a list talk like this. And, he'd do like a PowerPoint presentation of showing like all the spooky stuff that he's encountered over the years. But yeah, so just like those types of weird, silly people.
How does doing comedy with a group compare to doing it on your own, doing stand up?
A lot of times can be more fun. You do have to get familiar with everyone's voices and making room for everybody on stage and being patient. The more people you have, the more voices you're going to end up being in the show. So having that space is good. But just thinking about it now, like how much fun I had back then, just hanging out during the afternoon, drinking and writing with like some of your best buds, going out and recording a really weird sketch, wearing a fucking lab coat, walking around the city. Because we're all scientists. I keep doing this all the time now, but we were supposed to be scientists, so we all wore lab coats on stage, and of course, like for a lot of the videos that we did. But yeah, dude, like getting to write with friends is so fun, and I really enjoy punching up ideas. Everyone's just like pitter pattering off of like an idea, and you just come to like a writing session with like 2 words. Like I got chili claws written down. And then all of a sudden, an idea starts to take shape because everyone's pitter pattering and just building on this idea. And that's so much fun. Whereas stand up, it's a lot of solace, being by yourself, driving in a car by yourself, trying to write. And if you feel silly and insane, trying to like, how would I write a conversation with somebody, a group of strangers that have no part in the conversation? And sometimes it feels very monotonous and boring, mixed in with a lot of excitement, and you do have full control. So there's that. You got ultimate freedom, but with that comes a lot of I don't know. It's lonely. with stand up. You're only one up there. It's, the writing a lot of times can be monotonous and painstaking. And so, yeah, writing with a group can be a great break from that and can be a lot of fun.
That's awesome. Yeah, I actually just 2 days ago I put the final touches. Like I capped off, timed my 5 minutes, and I was practicing it. And I have some family in town right now, so I just went out to my garage and sat in the dark alone for like an hour practicing it. And I was like,
Yeah.
this is sort of a lonely thing to do.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
So when I reached out to you for information on your friend and fellow comedian Chris Weir, you told me to ask them about it. I did it again. Oh my gosh. I even have it written as Chris Weir.
Just don't say Seymour.
Yeah. So when I asked you about Chris Seymour, you told me to ask him about a weekend during which you two peed in the middle of the street.
Yeah.
So I feel like now I need your side of the story.
Okay. Well, how did he react when you brought that story up?
He was like, "Oh, which time?" but he did remember. He was like, "I think I know what he's talking about." But
he knows. That time, this was like years ago. We went out, did some shows in Indiana, South Bend. We did the Drop out there, which has since moved. And we had like a handful of shows there that weekend, and then at another place at Joker's, which no longer exists. But so we're hanging out in Indianapolis and South Bend for a few weekends. I think it was South Bend, where after the shows, was it South Bend? No, it was Indianapolis. After the shows, we went out with like one of the bartenders, brought us around. First, the place we're doing the show in, it's like 5 stories of bars, and they're like a comedy club. It was on the weekend, and it was just like this insane like club bar vibe that eventually I think someone pulled the fire alarm and everything was all scattered. But we ended up going to like a party at someone's place we didn't know, and then we had just been drinking all night, having a great time, and then we get to a house that's like in a nice neighborhood. We immediately feel like we shouldn't be here. We're a little older than some of the people. This is like a nice, neighborhood that we're in. And so we were just hammered. We eventually call an Uber, and Chris Seymour decides to pee in, like, not like in the grass or anything, like in the street. And we're seeing this as the Uber, he sees the Uber coming. He's peeing in the street. So I see our headlights, just like coming up, and then Chris Seymour taking like the biggest like I'd ever seen. You can just hear it, and that's why I say he's like kicking up gravel.
I was about to say that's exactly what he said. He was like, he didn't remember. He wasn't exactly sure about the moment at first, but as soon as he remembered the moment, he remembered the piss exactly.
Yeah. I was super impressed. Like, I'm howling laughing the whole night. Like, we clearly shouldn't be here. Like, it feels like people are ready to get up and start jogging or taking their kids to school or whatever. But yeah, so like he's pissing. Uber's coming. He finishes at the exact right time, and it was just a really funny experience. And just hearing pebbles kick around as he's taking a leak in this residential area. And then we left.
Hello, everybody. I hope you're having half as much fun listening to this podcast as I had making it. That wraps up the getting to know you portion of the podcast. And before we start talking comedy, I want to remind everyone to go check out 4x3. They drop awesome original comedy content every week on their YouTube channel, youtube.com/@FOURXTHREE. Or you can find it by looking up 4x3 on YouTube. Let's get back to the show. All right, so what did you want to be when you were a kid?
Batman.
That's a good answer.
Baseball player initially, and then wanted to eventually do comedy, but baseball player, that was the first thing.
Yeah, okay. Your background tells that story a little bit. When did you decide you were going to try stand-up?
Probably I got the inkling around the end of high school. and then eventually found myself doing it in college where there was like a talent night that I did it. So like I knew I wanted to do stand up probably at the end of high school, and then did that in college. Mm.
Yeah, I avoided every opportunity to do stand up in college. I was like, I mean, my podcast is called The Petrified Comedian. It's called that because I've done pretty much every other type of performance other than comedy. But to me, being the one person on stage with all of the attention, that was absolutely terrifying to me. So it was actually by listening to Mike Birbiglia's podcast, Working It Out. To me, he's one of the best storytellers. I've followed almost his entire career over the last
Mm.
20 or so years. And when I listened to his podcast, what was shocking to me is that conversationally, he's not just like funny all the time. He has to put a ton of work into it. He writes it out, he practices. And that was kind of the first moment where I was like, oh, my baseline skill right now is not just where I will be forever with comedy. If I start working on it, if I start focusing on trying to be a little funnier than I was yesterday, then eventually, and that was 8 months ago. And I feel like at this point, I've got 10 or so minutes of stand up written. I've done 4 podcasts and I've built a lot of confidence just trying it.
That's good. We'll eventually change this podcast to the Confident Comedian.
Someday.
Yeah, dude.
So, do you remember the first joke you ever wrote?
Like I vaguely remember probably the set that I tried to do when I did it that night on a college campus. So like yeah, like I think I had something about just it was probably like this like the dumbest stuff. Like I think I had something about if I was a midget, I'd dress up as like that brawny bear and go just like running around in neighborhoods and hiding in people's laundry or in their hampers. And so it's very like silly stuff like that. And then I probably, had some, then eventually, like when I went to Bananas and actually did it at a comedy stage in an actual environment, kind of like towards the end of college, like I feel like I started after I graduated college because I did it a few times and started kind of hanging out. But yeah, I think it was just really stupid stuff. And I do like kind of remember like some of the earlier sets, that I had. But yeah, I mean, I don't think I had like one first joke that I can recall, but it's probably really dumb and along the lines of that brawny thing, or not brawny. What's the bear I'm thinking of? Is that the brawny bear?
Charmin Bear?
The sharp? There was like a bear.
Oh no, yeah, I know what you're talking
Some
about.
bear. Yeah, the
Yeah,
guy
yeah,
laundry. That was like a kind of like a bigger commercial campaign for
yeah.
that.
I remember what you're talking about now. Okay, that explains the wanting to hide in people's laundry.
Yeah, yeah.
So, do you remember the first time you felt like you kind of nailed a set?
There were like probably like sometimes like I remember I think it was like my third time at Go Bananas where the set went really well, and I actually felt like like I had some growth between like the first time I went on stage there was just like a blur. There was I know I had some laughs, but it was just like you don't take into consideration like how startling it is going into a comedy club. That's probably like one of my first times actually being in a comedy club and just trying to take that in and seeing all the like seeing like Mitch Hedberg on the wall, and all these other like famous comedians. And then yeah, so it was very shocking. So the first time I really don't remember much of it. Second time didn't go well. And third time went well, and I get able to say track a little bit of growth there and how I was like, oh okay, well yeah, I could see how I could change this or do a different bit and really try to focus on writing a joke. So yeah, third time went well. That felt good. And there was probably like some other times, like I just remember earlier on, like at just bar mics or something where you're just like, oh, that went well. That was pretty good, you know. So yeah, I have some feelings about like the first times it went well.
Yeah, The first thing I did, which was actually Chris Seymour's suggestion, was like when you write it, just start like pick a friend that you trust and just tell it to him. And one of the things I chose to do because I knew for a fact he would tell me if it sucked. I told it to my dad because he is like I've watched him give advice creatively to my brother, and like I've done music and plays and stuff. He's always been almost too honest, so getting him to laugh was like it gave me a ton of confidence to keep writing. But yeah, so I'm gonna do my first open mic in a few weeks now. Very nervous, but just gonna practice like crazy and go up there and not expect to do too well. But what advice would you give to someone about to do their first open mic?
Try not to stress out too much about it. I know you're going to go through so many feelings. I'll say that the more you do it, the better it gets. Unless you become like a full time comedian, then your life's going to be just terrible forever. And no, it gets better. Like the more you do it, you'll just try and prepare for it. Know the jokes you want to get to, know the punchlines, because it is going to be a little bit startling when you first get up there, especially if you go like on a comedy clubs. Lights will be really bright. You won't be able to see much, so you do feel immediately on your own island, but with all the eyes on you. But you can't necessarily see all the eyes, but they're looking at you. So I'd say do as best as what you can to remember your set, try and relax, and understand, you're going to want to get back out there and do it again. So it's not going to be like the first and last time you do it. There's just so many sets you're going to do. So try not to think of it like as a big hurdle. Think about it as just something. It's a tiny step. It's one of a million steps you're going to take.
I like that. Yeah. Yeah, and I mean that's been pretty in line with the rest of the people I've gotten to talk to. Have just basically said like, A, you might suck. B, you're probably gonna suck. So just be ready for that, and if it happens, know that like no one's gonna judge you. They expect you to suck your first
Yeah,
time.
and like you were saying before about comedy, like it's a craft. You get better at it. The more you do it, the better you're going to get at it. For the most part, anything, the more experience that you have, the higher probability you have of success with that thing. So you're not supposed to be great the first time you try something. So just try and have fun. If you look like you're having fun, everyone else will probably reciprocate it. If they know it's your first time, they're not going to give a shit. So yeah, just try and have fun, man. And if I had to give like some really like practical advice, don't get drunk before it, and stick to your time. You know, so you don't want to piss off the club by going over your time. And if you drink too much, it doesn't help. You just forget some stuff, and it's not the coolest look. Bombing and being drunk isn't a good combo.
No, 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 because then
Yeah,
you can't even try to get yourself out of it.
yeah. It's not a good look. Bombing is one thing, but also being drunk on top of it, people worry about you.
Yeah, yeah. So, how long have you been doing comedy?
Over 10 years now. So yeah, I graduated in 2011, and then that's pretty much when I started that summer. But I had been hanging out a little bit before that and had done stand up, but I wasn't like pursuing it or doing it. It was just mostly like I'll dare myself to do it this time. I'll dare myself to do it this time, and then like I really want to get out there. And then when I realized like how much you got to be out there and how much time it takes, I was like I either got to quit school and do stand up or just wait to graduate and then start doing it after that. So I did the latter, decided to stick out school and not take up some other comedian spot that could be using it when I was just doing it every once in a while. So yeah, a little over 10 years.
So, I've often heard other comedians say that if like you don't really know what you're doing in comedy until you reach that 10-year point. Do you agree with that?
Um, I mean, maybe I feel like you do learn a lot of stuff about yourself throughout all the years that you're doing it. It takes a while to at least develop enough material and kind of like get your chops about you and know kind of who you are and what to talk about and develop experiences. So I mean, maybe there's a 10-year period where if I know someone's been doing comedy around 10 years, they're probably going to have more to talk about than a comedian that's been doing it 5. I'm not sure there's like any hard and fast rules or comparisons, but I think I feel like I've heard like around 7 you really start kind of like knowing who you are like a little bit more. But I mean, all of this, it just really depends on who you are. But like, if you make it 10 years in, you're probably, you've got something to say and have like yourself figured out to a point where you're probably at least, you know yourself on stage and you're kind of good to watch, hopefully, you know.
Yeah. And also at the same time, I think a part of that is if you reach 10 years and you're not there, maybe it's time to think about what you're doing.
Yeah, what are you doing? You've been doing this 10 years and you're still like, repeating the same stuff and not really like, you'll see those people. They're just like, what are you doing?
So, do you have a pre-show routine?
I will meditate and then I'll do PCP. No.
I feel like this is going to happen so much because I don't know if you're being serious.
I don't have a routine. I mean, I'll try to prepare, as best as what I can. But I mean, for certain things, like if I'm trying like something new, like a new bit, I'll definitely want to write and look over some stuff. But for the most part, I'm not. I'm just trying to have be in a good mindset. Try not to get up on stage drunk or high. Try to. But yeah. No, I don't have a pre-show routine.
Do you have a favorite venue you've ever performed at?
Favorite venue. I think performing at the Woodward and Motor I like a lot just because we did the Future Science there for years. So it does feel like kind of like home, and they've been really supportive of us doing a bunch of weird stuff for years there. So there's that comfortable feeling being there. I like anytime I go to Indianapolis and perform mostly, that another welcoming place. It doesn't feel like an away game going there. Like the White Rabbit is really fun. It's like a nice spot. They got a cool green room, big stage, good audience. I think Go Bananas really is honestly like one of the coolest rooms. Low ceilings, they can pack people in. Super fun. Yeah, that's a really cool spot. It's been years, but Hilarities in Cleveland has a really nice venue. Yeah, there's some nice spots, dude.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised. I was surprised to hear how many cool venues there are just like in Ohio.
Yeah, there's some nice ones. Denver Comedy Works. I've never worked a week there, but I got to do a set there earlier this year, and that place is really, because you're like in like the earth. You're like in the basement, so all of the noise is captured in there, and it was a good crowd of people. So I'd love to get back there and work a week, but that room seemed really special.
I don't know if you've ever been to the bar in Cincinnati called Ghost Baby, but
I've heard of it.
So it's an old Prohibition tunnel, and they have live music, but mostly they just do jazz. But it would be such a cool venue for comedy. It's literally just a massive brick arch that they've converted into a stage. Probably fits like 300 or 400 people.
That's cool.
But yeah, I think they should turn that into a comedy venue as well. What's the strangest place you've ever performed?
Strangest place. I performed at a wedding reception one time. It was supposed to be on a baseball field, which that was kind of the reason why I wanted to do it, because I was like, this sounds so awful. I want to see it in person, how bad it could be. This will actually tie back to what we were talking about earlier with the Harambe thing. But they ended up having it indoors. They didn't have it on the baseball field. So it was like in this gymnasium, the reception was, and it's at a wedding reception. You don't want to, You don't need a comedian there. Like everyone's there to talk to other people. No one wants to have to pay attention more than what they already have to. Like all the focus is going on the bride, the dad giving a speech and stuff like that. So like there was dance, everyone's having a good time on the dance floor, and then they like ask everyone, okay, stop. They turn off the music, like, all right, everyone get off the dance floor. Pretty much stop having fun. Give the microphone to these idiots. Of course, there's no stage. Yes, everything's completely lit up. And so it's just not a fun environment. I'm supposed to be closing it out, doing like 15. I probably gave them a hateful 25 of just because they weren't laughing. So like I was like, I'm gonna get you guys. But when I went up there, things were kind of like okay. But then I did that joke that talked about Harambe, and I didn't realize one of the girls that was in the wedding party, she stood up and walked out, and I thought she was getting to go to the bathroom, but apparently she got emotional because apparently she worked at the zoo, and it made her really upset, and so she was upset, and of course the party is getting like it's a stirring situation. Nothing's going right. If the bride and them aren't laughing and not having a good time, no one else is having a good time. So yeah, that was quite the experience. It was really bad. Yeah, you'll do some weird venues, but yeah, at a wedding was just so dumb.
Yeah, that's a genuine mistake. Wow, really sounds awful. What's the most challenging aspect of being a comedian for you?
I think trying to accept some of the things that are outside your control. You know, trying not to think about other people's successes. Other people's successes aren't necessarily your failures. You know, and it's a really kooky time in stand up. A lot of people can become elevated for reasons completely not related to their ability. Um, so yeah, I try not to worry about like that stuff. You know, yeah. What was the question again? I think I started trailing and started thinking of something else. I was like, I'm gonna,
Yeah, just what you find challenging about
what do I
comedy.
find challenging? Yeah, trying to get people to respond to you. Like when people don't know you, it's very challenging to get people to respond to you. So trying to do all the legwork behind the scenes of sending out emails. Driving can suck sometimes, you know. So some of those aspects, like anytime that you aren't on stage doing comedy, that those are the kind of some of the shittier parts. I don't know. I love getting to hang out with friends and all that. But there's definitely a lot more work that goes into comedy now. You know, especially with like how much you have to rely on like social media. I mean, people are getting booked like based upon like their social media followers alone. Which I mean, it's one thing, you know, if you do have those followers, but it doesn't necessarily translate to good comedy. A lot of people got those followers because they're really bad at comedy, and they attracted a bunch of dumb people. You know, so
Mm-hmm.
whatever. It's a weird time for comedy right now. I'm hoping the crowd work bubble will burst and there'll be a bit more opening. So you're competing with a lot more silliness, I feel.
Yeah, absolutely. So how do you come up with your material, and also how often do you change it up?
I just come up with my material, just thoughts. That's just what they are, and then I'll try to work on those thoughts, and then some of the stuff will, you know, take shape over years. Some stuff happens immediately in the first couple times you tell it, and there's jokes that you know, if you have like a decent premise or a concept, you can kind of, you know, maneuver that thing around a little bit and play with it and figure out like new ways to tell it, you know. But if you're just like a pun comedian, you can't, you don't have that luxury because like, oh, that word doesn't sound like this other word, so that's the whole bit. But like, there's been right, but there's been jokes that I've done like I'll come back at 2 after years like, oh, I got a new take on that idea, or I've got like this affects me differently now, and you just kind of figure out how to like tell certain things, and like some things just evolve over time, you know. But this is also coming down to like I need to record an album, so I'm not playing around with these jokes too much anymore. Because there's been like some jokes that you can mess around with over the years. It's fun to change and update them, and others just exist for, you know, you're not going to change it or whatever. But yeah, I need to get like these things on an album. so I'm not so I can come up with new stuff to tweak for the next 7 to 10 years.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, a lot of stand-up comedians I saw. I actually this podcast is sponsored by 4x3. And so I was just looking into some of the stand-up that they'd put out, and one of the most recent specials that they put out, the last person special, the last special that person did was 6 years prior. And so I mean, that is a fairly long gap for some comedians, but at the same time, it takes a long time to put together an hour of material.
Oh yeah, it really does take a long time, and some people putting out like hours every year. You can see like a waning, uh, you know, part to I guess like it's how good it is. There'll be some specials like, seems like you should have waited another year. Seems like you should have polished, because some of those things just seem like more so just thoughts. Like I would see someone working out at an open mic, but yeah, I mean, some comics are just prolific. Some people can put out full specials that are just like incredible. Every couple of years or so. Um, and it also takes a lot of time to work on all that stuff. So some of those comics that are in the upper echelons of comedy and can command any room, get all the stage time they need to develop those jokes. So yeah, so I mean, some of that stuff is really awesome. I mean, I don't think necessarily a person needs to do a new special every year. I think you will see diminishing returns on some specials, but I'm still going through that stuff myself and figuring out how to, because I've only done the half hour and some compilation stuff with other comics. So I'm hoping to be able to do a longer hour album later this year, hopefully. So yeah,
That'd be awesome, man.
yeah.
So we're getting close to wrapping up here. Just a couple of more questions.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on. I've been enjoying the questions so far. Hopefully, I wasn't getting too verbose there. I know I was kind of trailing off a little bit, but yeah.
No, man. So one of the things I want about this, I want this podcast to be, is for some people I want it to be the reason that they get into stand-up comedy, and for other people I want it to be the reason that they don't.
That's cool. I like that. That wants to be the reason some people get out of stand-up.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just trying to clear as much space for myself as possible.
That's a good one. I like it.
So, what do you love about comedy?
I love a lot of the people that I've met. I've made some really good friends, and I try to remind myself that at times. Like, say if like I am like at a show, or I'm like, oh, this person's taking too long up there. They're making the room a little sour, and just like the times I'm finding myself complaining about the most innocuous things. I'm trying to like, hey, you're having a great time right now. You're drinking for free. You're hanging out with some of your best friends. You're getting paid to make jokes about your penis. So I think it does put things into perspective. And the thing I do like the most is hanging out with like-minded people. Having some nice relationships that I've made over the years with people in cities I would have never really traveled to otherwise. I got some great friends, that don't live anywhere near me, and that's something that comedy has brought me.
Yeah, that's awesome. What do you hate about comedy?
The people, all the people. I feel like for every like one great dude you meet about 30 psychopaths. I think that the things I hate about comedy are too numerous to name. It'd be an entirely new podcast. But the thing specifically I hate the most are the gatekeepers that treat you like shit. It reminds me, going back to our service industry thing, of just the people that are in this just to be cogs, be goalies for people's advancements, and aren't really talented enough to be the people that they are booking. So they have to disrupt everyone else's advancements. I'd say those individuals in the comedy scene that are there to do more harm than good. and you'll see a lot of those people that are anyone that a lot of people that have power in the comedy scene are people to look out for. Some of them are really great, but a lot of people that have a lot of I don't know, titles to their name in the comedy world uh, can be people to be on guard about. But that's why I don't like the people that are there to prevent you from having fun and advancing your career for no other reasons other than their own insecurities.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's gatekeepers in every profession, but I think especially with how saturated comedy is right now, I think they sort of have this feeling like they're doing some good by trying to be difficult, and as
Yeah.
the comedian, it's
Mhm.
frustrating.
Yeah, they want to have that sense of validation, I feel. And a lot of them will also be like the comedian and booker. And it's just like, man, you would not be on any of these shows if you weren't the booker. All right. People are trying to suck up to you. People are not treating you the way they would if you're just a normal individual. But yeah, just the people that are out there to just be mean. I feel like
Yeah.
they just kind of lost sight of what are we doing here? We're trying to have fun, make jokes, and then you're trying to get all hostile with people, trying to do the thing we're all trying to do.
What's the most valuable piece of advice you've ever received from a fellow comedian?
The best piece of advice. Um, I don't know. I remember once I asked Todd Barry what we advice you to have for a new comedian. This is like I saw him at a theater. This was actually at Indianapolis, and it was Louis C.K. and then Todd Barry was opening up for him. But I said, "What advice do you?" Because I asked him the same. Well, what advice do you have for a new comedian? He says, "Write as much as you can, perform as much as you can." Which I know it's very basic advice, but I mean that is the thing. The people that write and perform as much as possible tend to have more advantages over the comics that don't. So I think that's been a constant. But of course, now you can just make a funny TikTok reel and just leapfrog the entire industry. So who knows at this point?
Yeah. Kind of going back to everything you were saying about the people that you meet within the comedy industry, do you feel like comedy is more of a community or a competition?
I think it's a community. And I guess getting back to the other question, the people that want to make it a competition are the ones that I really can't stand, where they just try to other you and classify you, and they try to get their own little comedy holes where it's just like this is our group, this is our community, this is your community, and they just need to have that validation, and it's just a way of trying to make comedy easier, I think, because they understand how difficult it is, and again feel insecure about what they're doing, so they try and apply pressure in the comedy world in some other ways as opposed to on the stage. You know,
Yeah. All right, Chris. Well, I've only got one more question for you. If you could have any job in comedy, what would it be?
I would be a voice actor for like some cartoon. I would love to uh, do that. It doesn't have to be like a kid's cartoon or something. Whatever it could be, like a Futurama thing. I could work with the Simpsons. I don't care. I just think like being a voice actor is like so much fun, and it's not like something that I don't explore too many voices in the comedy. Like I don't do voices in my stand up, but I do like exploring characters, and that came out like the future science. But I think being a voice actor would be fucking awesome. If I was a voice actor by day and a stand up comedian at night, and then made paintings and illustrations when I'm not working, I think that would be the life.
That'd be an awesome one. Well, Chris, I think you're well on your way. Thank you so much for being here. If you want to remind everybody what you have going on.
All right, yeah, I got some dates coming up here. On the 24th, I will be closing out the show in Louisville at the Laughing Derby. On the 25th, I will be in Cincinnati at Speak Easy Comedy. On the 27th, I'll be at the Comet doing 2 shows there. Go Bananas on the 31st. And then if you're in Bloomington, check me out for Limestone. I'll be there June 1st to the 3rd. So really looking forward to that.
Awesome. Awesome.